Okay, so welcome everyone to the Pursuing Intentional Learning and Organizations Together project. This 4-week series is sponsored by MSU's Graduate School and the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Today's session is titled Career Toolkit, Insights on Interviewing and Networking Success. We are excited to feature and engage in discussion with today's guest speakers. So for some context, the pilot project aims to bridge the gap between graduating students and non-academic professionals and provide graduate students with valuable insights and practical strategies for transitioning from academia to non-academic careers. We are now in the final week of our summer series. This week's sessions will be focused on job interviews and optimizing networking for career growth. We have one last workshop on Thursday, August 1st at 4 p.m. And we will use the same Zoom link from today's session for Thursday's workshop. And yes, one last thing, if you attended 75% of the guest speaker sessions and workshops, you qualify for a certificate acknowledging your participation in this series and workshops. If you are interested in receiving a certificate, please just email me and I will send it to you after the completion of this series. So now I'd like us to officially get started. I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Mike Phillip, who is the Director of the Bureau of Environment and Sustainability. We also have Stephen Carlson, who is the Division Director of the Pesticide and Plant Pest Management Division for the Bureau of Environment and Sustainability. And we also have Polly McKillop, who is the Animal Shelter Regulatory Program Manager. We are excited to have them with us today to share their insights and experiences. Each presentation will last about 15 minutes, allowing us to have a 10-minute session at the end for questions. Feel free to add your questions to the chat as they come to mind during the presentations, but we will address them like once all the presentations are complete. So you're welcome to also unmute at the end to ask your questions directly. So yeah, thank you all for being here and we can get started. So Mike, do you mind going first?
No, I don't mind at all. Thank you. Steve is laughing because we talked about this earlier. Who was going to go first? So thank you, Mike Phillip with MDARD. I don't have a presentation. I'm just going to chit chat if that works for you. I've got my notes here, and shall I just begin? All right. Hi, everyone. So I got sort of three parts to my chat here. I'm going to check the time, make sure I don't go over. So interviewing and networking, it's all about communication. And my question for you is, are you a good communicator? That's rhetorical for the time being, but I'm going to return to that toward the end here. So part one here, just some tips for interviewing. So at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, I conducted something like 65 interviews, so I have a lot of stuff fresh in my mind. It's a very grueling process, really, for both people on either side of the desk. But a few things, just my tips for interviewing. First thing is, and I'm not sure, to be honest, if this would get me in trouble for saying it, but I'll say it anyway, and that is dress the part when you come to an interview, depending on what you're interviewing for. It's just be cognizant of, regardless of whether your attire should matter, it will matter consciously or unconsciously in some interviewers' eyes. So just be cognizant, come dressed for an interview. And then while you're interviewing, I should say really beforehand, but it leads up to during the interview, expect a question that is going to test your preparation. So for example, somebody might ask you, which of our programs at MDARD do you think is best for you? And that sort of means, did you study beforehand? Did you check out our website and learn a little bit about our programs, learn a little bit about our structure? And some people don't, and it is very noticeable, and it won't necessarily make all the difference, but it could make some of the difference in the process. So expect that question and do a little bit of research. You know, virtually any interview you do, at least coming to the state, will have a time limit. They're going to tell you, okay, you have 30 minutes or 45 or an hour. Watch the clock and take the right amount of time. So that's easy to say when you're not being interviewed and you're nervous and you got the tunnel vision and time doesn't go by normally. But you don't want to, if you are watching the clock and it's only 10 minutes left and you've only answered 3 questions, you're probably saying too much. Vice versa, if you're halfway through the questions and it's only been 5 minutes, you probably haven't said enough. So find the middle path there. In my opinion, if I were in a 45-minute interview, I'd want my answers to take like 30, 35 minutes. Maybe 30 minutes would be good. It's a good amount of content. It leaves time for questions afterwards, and you're going to want to ask a meaningful question or two at the end of your interview. So watch the clock. Something I see frequently is sort of what I call over preparation. So it may not seem possible. Like you absolutely want to be prepared. I said that 45 seconds ago, but you want to avoid sounding like you have memorized the interview manual, right? The yellow book, Idiot's Guide to Interviewing. You can sometimes feel a little bit too mechanical, like you're saying all the things we think we want you to say. And you can, I think over prep can lead to that. A little bit of spontaneity, I think, is good. Be prepared, but allow for some amount of spontaneity in the interview. My next bullet is, it's not about everything and the kitchen sink, meaning, and maybe, sorry, I'm going to steal one from Steve here. Forgive me, Steve, but Steve we talked months ago about interviews and he used the term get in and get out, meaning say what you have to say, be succinct, and don't, when you're done saying what you want to say, that's a good time to stop instead of, oh, but there's more. And then there's this other thing, but wait, I just remembered, because it isn't all about how much you can squeeze into that right amount of time. It's about saying the right things and the things that are succinct and the most powerful. So, when I prep for an interview, unfortunately, I haven't had to do many lately and hope never to have to interview for a job again if all goes well, unless they're doing interviews for the greeter at Walmart, because that's my retirement job. Is the way I prep is, for one, I'll check the internet, look for good interview questions, but I kind of come in with a notepad with just key points, even just single words written down. Maybe my 3 biggest accomplishments, even not knowing what the interview questions are. If I have like kind of 3 values and 3 accomplishments and a few other things, I can weave those into just about any answer. And you don't have to like memorize your entire historical biography. Just have key points and try to feel like you're just having a conversation with somebody, because you can talk about yourself. It's really easy to talk about yourself. It's harder when you're being interviewed, but try to approach it that way. These are my key points, and I'm just going to talk. I'm going to skip that. I'm watching the clock. Put all your cards on the table. So when I interviewed for my first job at MDARD here, it was my dream job at the time. I was 25 years old. I was just out of graduate school. My degree was in entomology, and the job was all about bugs and plants, and I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And my wife, when I was going to the interview, of course, I was super nervous, and she said, you need to make sure that like you don't leave anything on the table, that you let them know this is exactly what you want to do, and be passionate about it. And I don't know if these were the words she said, but they're what she would say today. And that is, remember, in an interview, second place is first loser. That's kind of harsh. But the point is, don't leave that interview until you've said what you want to say, sort of from the heart, if it's everything you want in a job. So it's all in an interview, it's all about you. It's all about you. And that can be an awkward place if you don't love talking about how great you are. And most people don't, just because we have social skills, but that's what it's about. It's talking about how great you are, but at the same time, balancing that with don't be obnoxious talk about how great you are, but do it with humility. And that's a hard line to find, but you have to remember when you're in the interview, want to use the word I. I did this, I did that, and I had a team that helped, but I did it. Don't lie, but it's not time to give the credit to everyone. It's time to take some for yourself. Lastly, in my interview tips here, is be your authentic self, meaning it can be easy to go into an interview and try to guess what they want you to say or how they want you to be, but be you. Answer the questions the way how you believe, because not only is that people will pick up on that authenticity, but if you get the job, you want to have gotten the job being your actual you, because if you're going to spend a whole career in an organization, you don't want to have to pretend to be who you were in the interview for the next 30 years. Okay, those are my comments on interviews. I'm going to shift over to just the networking side of things. Networking is really important. Relationship building is really important. And I'm an introvert. It doesn't come super naturally to me, but I do it as part of my day job. It's a lot of that. And just remember, they aren't going to come to you. You have to go to them, whoever they are. You're going to have to reach out. If you are really wanting a job at the Michigan Department of Agriculture in the Pesticide and Plant Pest Management Division, just throwing that out there, you really need to go to Steve Carlson and network with him. It's because he's not coming to you because he doesn't know who all the people are. Go to him, go to the people. And it's a little bit Machiavellian, but you also need to know who is who. Who is going to be the person that I need to know? And I don't want it to sound too much like, don't talk to people who don't matter to me, only talk to the ones who do. That's not true, but you need to know and have some sort of emphasis on, yes, that person is somebody I need to talk to because that person can help me, and hopefully vice versa. When you network with people, be an active listener. When you're having that conversation, active listening, and it's one of the emotional intelligence skills, but listen with the purpose of understanding what they're saying, not with the purpose of reloading and replying, right? Listen to them. That's going to build their trust in you. It's going to build the relationship. And that's part of what the whole networking thing is about, building that relationship. Demonstrate your value to them. Okay, so part of that is, knowing what room you're going into, knowing who you're going to talk to, knowing what they're going to want to hear from you when you're not doing the active listening role, when you're doing the speaking. Find that value you have that they want and demonstrate that to them. And part of that is being prepared, because I'm going to go back to job interviews. When you are networking with people, you are in an interview. You're always in an interview. When you're in an interview, you're in an interview for your next job too. So just always remember that. Always be on, because you're interviewing for a job you might not even know exists yet. I'll say this one kind of jokingly as I kind of get to the end here. My current boss, or former boss, I don't know, one of my bosses is an expert at interpersonal human communication, former legislator, and knows how to work a room. And she refers to, you'll talk to somebody if you're having a conversation. If you're not active listening, you might be looking over their shoulder to what she calls looking for a better offer. Meaning, who is coming into the room that is more important for me to talk to? Avoid looking for better offers. Active listening, of course. And lastly, this should go without saying, don't be annoying. That sounds funny, but sometimes people can be, right? I can be, I know that. Just try to read the person. How are they responding to what you're saying? And get along. So, my math says I have 3 minutes left. Am I correct, or 2 minutes? Okay. Very quickly, back to that question. Are you a good communicator? Here's what I'm going to ask you. It's rhetorical, but what is the story that you're telling? Because it's always a story. Whether you're interviewing or you're having a conversation with somebody, you're trying to convince them of something, it's always a story. Find the story, find the narrative thread, tell it like that, because it will be compelling. People like stories. Tell it like a narrative, and people will listen. Remember that explaining something isn't the same as messaging it. Okay. Sometimes we want to explain, maybe sometimes in an interview, but you're more likely wanting to message. You wanting to make powerful points. Don't get into the trap. Well, if I just explain more, I'll convince them. You convince them through messaging. And once you've got them, then you can provide the explanation, but it's more about messaging. And related to that, good advice I got, bottom line on top, meaning, we learn to write essays with the introduction and the arguments and then the conclusion. In an interview or in an important conversation, start with your conclusion, bottom line on top, and then go from there, because that's how you're going to compel them to want to keep listening. Be succinct and use powerful words. I love that advice. I got that a long time ago. I won't say more. You know what it means. Be succinct, use powerful words. Don't be boring. Be somebody wants to listen to. If you feel like you're not super dynamic in communicating, just practice. I mean, you can get better at it. Practice being dynamic, and it can be super uncomfortable. Again, introvert, but it helps people listen, and that's what you want. You want people listening to you. And lastly, you can never be too good a communicator. No matter how good or how bad you are, we all need to be better at it. And it is one of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal, whether you're just trying to get a job outside of academia or you're 30 years in. Communication, it's what it's all about. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate that comment about how you're always kind of preparing for you're always kind of in that process of interviewing, and it's never really over. You kind of want to be that storyteller, that active listener. So thank you so much. Stephen, do you mind if we go to you next?
Nope, I'm good. So Mike saw my presentation before he did his, so he clearly stole some stuff from me. But I was going to talk about three things. Basically what we do in MDARD and in our division, interviews, and my thoughts on interviews, and then working at Triple PM and doing a little sales pitch about, what we do. And I think I'll start out with what we do in this department. Our director, our big director, Dr. Tim Boring, has 3 or 4 priorities: climate resiliency, promoting diversity in Michigan's agriculture, promote more prosperity across the state, and continue to make MDARD the best place to work. And I spend a lot of time with number 4, but I think those are I think it makes for meaningful work and supportive work where you can find a career and you can make a difference. And we do make a difference in people's lives. We protect human, animal, environmental, and the economic well-being of people in the state of Michigan. We serve the 10 million people that live here. We don't just serve, the industries that we regulate. People that we serve probably don't even know that we're out there doing our jobs, from what Polly does to what the food scientists do over in our food division to what our inspectors in our division do with protecting people and making sure people are using pesticides correctly. If you want a career that impacts people's lives and makes a difference and keeps the playing field level for everyone, MDARD is the place for you. And it's a great place to work. And our current director makes it even more so, as well as Mike happens to be my boss, so it's the same. And there's interviewing. I spend a lot of time with interviewings and talking to people that are from all parts of our division, as well as people that are trying to get into the state government and into MDARD from the outside. And I take great pride in the people that find me and spend time with me before they even get hired and talk about the things that I'm kind of just going to gloss over with you all right now. So I can really speak to what we do, but I don't think that we're unique. And Mike kind of talked about, and I'll say it a few times here: tell your story, tell the story of you. and then once you're in here, you'll tell the organizational story with you, but in an interview, it's your story. And we use a behavioral style interviewing where we ask you questions about, give me a situation where you did, X, Y, and Z. What was the situation? How you did it? What was the action that you did to get to the end? And then the ultimate result. It's called the STAR behavioral style interview. You can get, like Mike said, you can get all the questions you want just by Googling them. And like Mike said, be ready to answer a question specifically about, the something that you're kind of not ready for, but like Mike said, if somebody might ask you, like, what do you think about our, Triple PM's stance on pesticide and aerial applicators or something? Our website is full of things that we actually do and the things that we spend time working on. Probably I didn't say that because you were there. That came to the top of my head. My current focus right now in my position is really helping people realize their goals of their promotions. But I do get involved with people trying to get in and hiring new people into our division. But my philosophy kind of goes all the way across the board. And that is, when do you get a chance to have 3 or 4 people sitting across a table from you, listening to you and listening to what your story is and how you think about things and what you would do in a situation, that a hypothetical or a situation that you've actually been in, and people are sitting there hanging on your words, especially if you are telling a great story that once you're done, the instant question is, well, how did you feel about that? Or how did you, come back from that? Or what kind of good feelings did you have from this great accomplishment that you did, that you were maybe part of a team, but you were the leader of the team, or you were a key part of the team? And like Mike said, it's when you're in with us, you're on a team, but it's this crazy dichotomy of, in an interview, you're alone and part of a team, but ultimately it's really what you do. And we want to hear the I's and me's probably more so than when you actually are part of a team, part of the team. And it's an interesting line. You don't want to be cocky, but I think being confident shows through. And the people that I interact with that are trying to get in, I think it's a hard thing to say, especially going for a first big job where you've got to say, I did this, but I know I was a part of a team, but I took a leadership role in the team. And like I said, it's not a time to be cocky, but it is not a time to be passive. And I always tell people that are interviewing with us that don't just sit there and take it. Don't be offensive, but go on the offensive and lead people to asking you follow-up questions, and just out of curiosity to say, yeah, what were you thinking about when you made these decisions? Not just, I worked on an invasive insect that was loose in Metro Detroit. Tell the whole story about, I had to get the trapping materials, I had to deal with pheromones, I had to disperse my team, I had to, follow proper procedures, I had to make contacts with homeowners. Break down everything that you've done, your big projects. Like Mike said, have 3 things, but don't say, I worked on a response project to an invasive species. I worked on an invasive species, but this was my role, and this is where I was a leader, and this is where I made a difference. And take control of the interview and be a leader and be enthusiastic. And I wrote on my bullet, do your research. So, have some idea of what we're looking for, were you to interview with us. And then if something comes out in the interview again, don't just sit there and take it. Be curious and ask the interviewer about a situation that, you know, to clarify, or to like how Triple PM does things in a, if you don't understand. And I'm going to skip that one. Again, tell your story. It's a good one. No matter what you think, your story is a good one, and and make me think it's a good one, and make me want to know more about you. And Mike taught me something when Mike and I applied for the same job a few years ago, and Mike got it over me, thank goodness. But and now I'm in that job, but as he's moved up. But I always do this in interviews now, and I've had a couple, and I've sat through a bunch. But I always do this thing where and again, Mike taught me this. I have a little piece of paper that says, "Don't leave the room without saying this." If it doesn't come out in the interview, and you want to tell people that, you know, there's something important that you should know about me, just put a little reminder for yourself. I mean, write it on your hand, but make sure you say what you want to say, and you take control of the things that you want them to know about you. Especially like Mike said, if it's true, you certainly don't want to tell something that's not true. But by God, you know, make sure I know this thing about you that you want me to know. And you get a time at the end, as long as you budgeted your time correctly. I just looked at the clock. To tell that thing or things that you want people to know. Like, I am passionate about emotional intelligence, and I've done classes, or I'm just making things up as I speak here, but make sure that you tell your story, and that the key points of your story come out when you're talking to Mike or me, or I think is the best organization in state government right now. There's all sorts of opportunities to advance your career. The average age that somebody that leaves Triple PM as of last spring was 63 years old. I know that seems like a lot for somebody that's not in, but people don't leave 3PM when they get here, because you can build a career here. The focus, the priorities that I said at the beginning, the you know, climate resiliency, regenerative agriculture. I mean, we're cutting edge right now. We strive to be a critical thinking organization. We've put our entire division and bureau through critical thinking, an MSU class with Dr. Michael Ripp from MSU. It doesn't matter the number next to your name. In state government, we're all like division director, state administrator, you know, XYZ number. It doesn't matter the number next to your name. It matters what you bring to the room where the decisions are made. If a decision cannot be made without you, no matter what the number is, then you will be in that room, and you will be a part of decisions. Because if we're going to be a critically thinking organization that makes good decision with all available knowledge, then it doesn't matter if you've been here for 1 year or 26 years. If you know something and can do something, then we better damn well not leave you out of that room, because you should be in there. And Mike talked about being your authentic self. Triple PM is a place that you could be your authentic self. We strive to let people can be whoever they are, because one, it's the right thing, but two, it makes our organization better. People can be their authentic self at work and do the things that need to be done for the good of the state, good of the bureau, as well as for themselves. So it's easy to toss the family word around a little bit, but in a lot of respects, I mean, we spend a lot of time with each other all day long, and we better be able to let you be yourself. And that's my end.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate this idea. You really emphasize storytelling, but it almost seems like also the storytelling of the industry you want to work for, like understanding the values, understanding the impact, and how your story like really fits in with that. It's, yeah, really powerful. Thank you. And yeah, so Holly, do you mind going next?
No, I don't mind. I'm going to be a little different than my two gentlemen that went ahead of me. I'm going to give you just a little bit of my journey, if I can get it to show the full slide for you. So I'm on my 38th year with MDARD. I started out in '86 with a bachelor's in horticulture. And I did MPA and law school coursework and facilitated leadership certifications. I started in the pesticide and plant pest management division and worked there for a number of years in a number of positions. And at the point that division was and where I was, I didn't really think I could affect any more change. I had sort of done the things that I felt I was going to do. And again, at that point, I didn't know if I should be looking into higher academia or shifting into law school. Then had a person that I admired. We had some similar value systems as far as public administration, and I went to work for the racing commissioner. That particular unit dissolved, and I got bounced over to affairs, exhibition, and racing division. Within MDARD, that division got dissolved. I got bounced over to operational services and central licensing, and now I find myself here at animal industry. So, so I'm a little bit about being nimble, and I'm a little bit about your journey to discover that regardless of where you're working, that you have some core skill sets, and you probably have some core values. I think Ashley and Kayleen talked about that earlier. And even if you can do a job, is it the thing you want to do? And how do you get at that? Because that gives you job satisfaction and even more so life satisfaction. So, I mean, you can do it for a while, and then, you can't really separate out that person. So, Mike and Steve have provided you a lot of great information. I'm going to try not to go over that, so that's fine. What I will say is, when you're applying for a position, it's this congruence of a triangle between your interview, right, and your letter, the persuasiveness of that letter, why I want this job. And that should have a little bit of research to understand, what that position's about. And if you don't know, then start reaching out to people in that organization that can help you understand a little bit about the organization. We put a lot of jargon, especially in the public sector, of what we do, and we have way too many acronyms. But and then you've got that resume, and that together hopefully gets you to positions that you might have a good job fit for. And that's probably a trite term overused over the years, but it really is about job fit. And when it gets down to, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Or is it, going to start out for a while in academia and you want to shift to industry or public sector? It takes a look at those. How do you align with that organization, and even further, the unit you want to work in and the people you want to work with? It's okay. It's this, I tend to be a little, 100,000-foot view and saying, you're a whole person and you aren't just your job, and you can be your job for a while. But I think in America, we focus on that a little bit too much. Not who am I? What do I do? Right. So, to echo what Steve said about the interview, I know our style, there's always room at the end, for you to be able to say, do you have any additional questions for me? Or you also say, I don't think I had an opportunity to let you know about X or Y. If something is really great about you and it doesn't come up in that interview process, then it's okay for you to figure out a way to get that in front of somebody. hopefully it's in that letter, and hopefully it's in your resume, and it's going to talk about those core skills. Because I would argue you all have core skills. Critical thinking, you're bright, you're sharp, you're academically accomplished. I should be able to take you and put you in almost any position and have you succeed, right? That's how I go to being a subject matter expert on animal welfare for companion animals in housing facilities. And I am one of the few people in the division that's not a veterinarian. I am a horticulturist, okay? But it's those core skills I have that you could transplant me somewhere and I'll figure out how to find the laws and regs. I will figure out what the key industry groups are. I will develop those networks to help make that shift. So, you know, whether you're talking about aligning with the leadership, you know, you heard Mike and Steve talk about our director, Dr. Boring. You know, in government, we can have one of those every 4 years, right? It's an election year. There's politics that are involved, okay? So again, it's public service. And if you're wired for public service, then you can see the bigger picture, which is I'm serving the citizens of the state of Michigan that need me and need these programs or need somebody to be watching over somebody, because I do have a couple of programs that are very regulatory. And it doesn't matter to some extent who is the governor and who is the director. You know, unless they eliminate your program, then you're going to have to shift. But realistically, you know, the statutory requirements, the acts and the regulations are going to be there. So sometimes I see when people come to us that are very skilled or very scientifically technical, you know, it can be a little stressful. And just realize the pendulum swings back and forth all the time. And the challenge is you need to have some people, you know, that's in your group that whether or not, you know, I'm in your division or whatever, the big picture is you're going to be fine because that pendulum swings. We just had a reorganization, if you will, in January, and they took the divisions and mixed them up a little bit and put them in 4 bureaus. Change is stressful. And I'm like, this could be interesting because there's some pluses, but there's a lot of pluses, and there might be some minuses, which means, you know, a little bit of transition, a little bit of fatigue with transition, a little bit of, didn't think about that transition. But by far, you know, leadership has done a great job with that, in my opinion. Now, in somebody else's opinion, it might not be so great. But you know, if you're shifting from academia to industry and public service, you know, in a public sector, I would also argue you go to industry and you work for a large bureaucracy, because the state of Michigan is a large bureaucracy and it doesn't shift quickly. And I know a couple of people I work with came from private industry where it's nice and linear sequential. And ours is not necessarily that way, but there's lots of people that would help mentor you through those processes and understand that, no, before we do that, we've got to do this, and I've got to get approval for that, and, you know, multi-layers, and it's okay. There's a process. You're bright, you'll figure it out. You know, you surround yourself with people that help make you successful. I would say you just need to be prepared to be able to make that shift from academia. And prepared means just probably the biggest impediment is you personally, is going to be gentle with yourself, right? So I get plucked out of one division that disappears and gets scattered, and I land in another organization and I go, don't know anything about what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And I'm a big advocate of leading from the chair. So it's like, well, okay, I got to put a plan together on how I'm going to learn. Am I going to go out with field people and actually be in the organizations and facilities and buildings? I am an asker of questions. And I'm an advocate of having, you know, my support group. It's also sometimes depending on what position you're looking at or industry, it's a lifestyle change. Is it, I'm commuting every day to somewhere? Now we work primarily from home and I'm going to have a field position. Part of that sort of, personal, what needs do you have? And those are going to change. People have children, people have parents to care for, people have mobility issues, whatever. So take a look at how that fits in your lifestyle. Try it out, if you're interested, you know, uh, get somebody that's in the industry, even if they're on the other side of the regulatory part. Get to know that industry. If that means you get to pick your research projects or the topics that you want to write about or do in your academic program, that's a great way. It's, to me, double dipping. I get to learn about something I'm interested in as well as get, credit for it. That might be the way that you find some mentors, and topics, and they can come to you from anywhere. So I just say keep an open mind. You might meet somebody, at your church, or you might meet somebody at the gym. You just never know where you're going to meet somebody and have that serendipity that goes along with, oh, I wonder if they know. So, and I'll hang my hat up. I'm an introvert as well. So there's, some pretty good successes for introverts, in organizations as well. I would say, kind of going back to, the shift, if you've been busy with, academia and journals and publishing and all that, that in the non-academia world, you're going to want to summarize some of that and not, list it out as bullet points. You're going to want to highlight your strengths. And whatever those are, time management, communication, you're curious, you're nimble. Those are important because they're authentically who you are. If you're a self-starter. Mentoring, I can't say enough about mentoring, whether it's practice interviews, whether it's having other people look at your resume, send me your resume and ask if I'd be willing to look at it. I've done that for the College of Ag and Nat Resources. And you might be looking at choosing also a person sometimes when you're in a position versus a position description. And that's okay. The job may sound like the greatest job in the world, but when you meet the person you'd be working for, you might, not want to work for that person. So, there's some soft skill parts of this as well. And it's okay. You're not giving up something, because I always think you're in the right place, regardless if it makes no sense, right? So, and again, you'll want to align yourself with leaders and managers that you're inspired by, and know yourself, right? And you all are much younger than I am. And so you are on a journey of knowing yourself. Be resilient. 100 no's and 1 yes is okay. We have all had amazing amounts of no's in our lifetime. Make sure that you get people that are actively engaged in teeing you up for success, and believe in what you're trying to do and to be able to grow you as well. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you so much, Polly. Yeah, there seems to be across all three of your presentations this emphasis on authenticity, and I really like how you're highlighting like authenticity is also about like wholeness. It's about like wholeness of your application and professional documents, wholeness of you as a person, wholeness of like, whether it's the political environment, climate, it's all involved. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, so we have actually 15 minutes for questions. If you all want to unmute, or you can put your questions in the chat and I can read them out loud. can also get the ball rolling in case people want to think or write their questions in the chat. But I guess one question I have is, we had 1 week where there was this emphasis on like getting to be able to get a sense of what an organization's values are. That moment in an interview that's so important is like when you have that opportunity to ask questions. And I guess I'm wondering, like, either do you have some sort of example of when like someone who you really were impressed like with those kinds of questions they were asking you, or if you can think of any kind of, I don't know, questions that were like help you see that authenticity, help you see that depth, help you, you know, anyways, I hope that makes sense.
So you're asking what a question that is that when we're interviewing people that they ask that so we can show the value of our organization, or?
No, I meant, well, what I more meant was like at the end of an interview when they're like, do you have any questions for us? Is the, do you have any, is there a moment that sticks out to you if you've been on those interviewing committees, or like any examples of questions that you thought were really great?
You know, we just had a bunch of new inspectors start a month ago, nine brand new entry-level inspectors, and one of them asked me, it was before her first day, but I thought it was a very good question, and she asked me what advice would I give her as somebody that's coming brand new into 3PM. And I thought, I mean, there's always what my dad told me and blah, 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 but then I thought, I thought it showed me what she's thinking about, but also I think was an important message for me to say yes. When you get to 3PM, you're going to get exposed to a lot of different things, and saying yes to new things will get you down the road, and it'll show that you're interested in that. We are an organization that, like I said earlier, in your first year, if you have something to say, we are an organization that pays attention to people. And I say this to people when they're looking at us for jobs, to say, from our point of view, to say what kind of organization we are an organization that takes care of people. I mean, the people that come to us and that are gone through the process and work for us, they are cared for. I mean, their career-wise, they are cared for. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but.
No, that was a great response. Thank you.
I can ask Mike Phillip a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Steve?
No, I'm just teasing.
Okay, good.
We actually do have a question for Mike in the chat.
Oh.
So Ethan asks, you mentioned something about messaging instead of over-explaining. Could you please elaborate on what you mean by messaging?
Yeah, messaging is, I'll say it's another way of, I also said, be succinct and use powerful words, and less is more. That's messaging. It's you're making a strong point. You're not necessarily explaining all of the mechanics that gets you to there. That comes after the fact. I think you got to snag people with the powerful message. And then when they're still interested, you can explain all the details, and that's the explanation part. So yeah, I don't have like a textbook definition, but to me, messaging is a concise, powerful statement, and it hits hard, versus explanation, which is long and more cerebral and more wordy. And there's a great time for that. But I think in an interview, you want to message hard. Was that something?
Don't tell me how computers work. Just tell me what you can make it do. When we interview our IT people.
Yeah, that's a great example, Steve, because we have that. You ask a question about the computer, and somebody might start with the invention of the computer in 1945 or whatever. Don't start there. That's explaining.
Well, we do have another question for Mike from Stephen.
No, that's a joke. You can ignore that.
No, it's serious.
Well, he asked, it is a great question. What advice would you give to some young division director who wants to move up? So related to promotion or...
I don't have any young division directors who work for me. Take that, Steve. My advice would be, gosh, he's put me on the spot here. So for a young division director who wants to move up,
or anybody that wants to just take a promotion. Well,
yeah, I would say this: show that you can manage change and adapt to change relatively easily. Change is, I think it was Polly, you said it, change is hard. It's really hard. And even for people who it's easy for, it's still hard. And if you can demonstrate that you can adapt and kind of roll with the punches, even if it's not what you would do, I think that will pay off in a big way, is adapting to change. And I would also add, demonstrate that you're a critical thinker. We had critical thinking class a few weeks ago, and the teacher was talking about how jobs of the future, they want people, in fact, jobs of today, employers want people who know how to think, not what to think, but how to think. Demonstrate that you can show how to think. And then my last one would be a good communicator. If you have those three things, I think a young division director could move up.
I thought you were going to say something about assassinating you or something.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any more questions?
I have a question. Thank you, all the three speakers. But I was just curious. I think in general, I've not taken a lot of job interviews, but I think one of the questions that is common, I guess, it's just tell us about yourself. And I really don't know how far to go to start with telling them about myself. So, I mean, is there any other tips that you would want to give us as an interviewee that you would expect others to answer for that question? Thank you.
Polly, do you want to go?
Well, I would just say, at the high level, in our process, we've already got your interest letter, right? So that's going to tell me a little bit about you. And heaven forbid, hopefully it's the right job that, we get all kinds of things. So we get people who give us a letter that's for a different job than what they've applied for. That's tough. We've also had, we've got typically your transcript, we've got your resume, and so we've got the minutia, provided that you've provided it, right? And so tell me then, in a few words, what I need to know about you, right? And it's those, I'm a big advocate of the 3 to 5 rule. And again, if you've researched the position a bit and the organizational values, right? Because we haven't posted what our organizational values are, then try to weave those in. That would be my recommendation.
So I just went through this with a young person that went from one division to our division, and we talked about this question a lot because it's very common for us to ask this question. And I think, there's like Polly just said, there's the resume and the cover letter and all that and the transcript. So we clearly know about, jobs that you've had and the education that you received. And this person. We talked a long time about this, and I think it goes to, you know, take a look at the job that you're going for, and see where your life crosses over into that. Like if you were interviewing for us, and I'm just, you know, I don't know your background, but if you grew up on a farm and you were active in 4-H, or, you know, some sort of farm development for kids or whatever, and you say, you know, wow, I grew up on a farm, I've always been interested in pesticides, and, you know, I've worked with them over the years, and finding better ways to apply integrated pest management, because, you know, we used to do this on my family farm, or, you know, or when I was young, I saw the value of applying safe pesticides. I think it's an opportunity to do a quick crossover into how you have a life experience that maybe crosses over into the organization that you're applying for. You know, like Polly just said, you know, don't tell me something I already read. Tell me something that's like you.
Okay, and then we have time for one last question. We have a question in the chat. It says, when you are using narrative or story to be more engaging, do you have any advice on how to be succinct or hit the important points without turning it into a longer story, like that like the person can get bored with?
Probably, although I'm not sure. So I'm not a fast thinker, and it takes me a minute to digest things, which is maybe why I'm not a great interviewer. I don't know. Steve is a very fast thinker. He might have an answer to this.
You know, I would say, and I get accused of this going a little too long, by my wife, but I think the get in and get out, you know, it's usually in the preamble is where people get tripped up and explaining, like Mike just talked about. Whereas I think if you go with the bottom first method that Mike was talking about, like a newspaper story where you say everything that needs to be said in the first sentence, and then in the first paragraph, while your audience is ends up looking for more, to say, oh well, how did he do that? You know, how did he come up with a new way to, you know, trap emerald ash borers or something? You know, I think that's where it is, and I think it's something like Mike had said about, you know, practicing with your friends. I know it's not probably the most fun thing to do, and God knows I don't like to have to run my wife through interviews when I go through them, but sometimes it's helpful, and getting that second set of eyes or ears on something might help you. That's I think it's just a feel how you when you think you're just doing too much.
Thanks, Steve. I'll add two just specific examples. So there's an employee in the bureau who is brilliant and amazing, but struggles to sort of tell the story in a succinct way. And what I've often thought as this person is talking to me is, all right, every time you are tempted to use the words, for example, or because of this, abort. That's when you stop and go on to your next thought. Because, and also similar, so every 2 weeks I write a report to our executive office, kind of summarizing what's happening in the bureau. And a standard I sort of apply to that is, did I need to write? So I try to write one sentence. And if I'm going to write more, it's got to be for a good reason. I ask myself, do they need to know this in order to be interested? If no, I'm not going to include it, because if they're interested, all they have to do is reply back, tell me more about this. And they do sometimes. to me, I like to give them the option of asking for more rather than me always wanting to give it. And I always do want to give more because I like running my mouth, which I'm doing right now. And it's after 5, so I'll stop there.
Well, thank you all so much. We all really, really appreciate the time taken to be here with us today. And yeah, thank you so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. I hope it was helpful.
It was.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
Good
you.
luck to everyone.
Yeah.